that was all Harvey Weinstein's fault. I mean, that's kind of savage. Hi, how are you? I hope that you're very, very well. Today's video is a little bit different and I kind of feel like Shane Dawson when he did his conspiracy videos, but also these aren't conspiracies, these are real things that really happened. But these are the biggest scandals or injustices or like drama, bad things that happened in theatre. Ever. I'm sure bigger things happened that I don't know about, but these are actually just some of the things that I have known about for a while and I thought it would be interesting to talk about them, because the other day I was talking about one of these things with my mum and she was like, I had no idea that that producer was even on that show and I never knew that that happened. So I thought it would be interesting. I'm gonna do my best to get all of the facts right. Obviously, I was not involved in any of these dramas myself, but this is all through research. I tried to get as much information as physically possible. So if there is anything wrong, it's not my fault. So yeah, I feel like we should just go right into it. Some are kind of less dramatic and some are more dramatic, and I am done doing disclaimers. So the first one I wanted to talk about was Beetlejuice. It's not really a huge scandal or whatever, but basically Beetlejuice is a show that is on Broadway at the moment and it's great, but it's doing really, really well. It broke box office records at Thanksgiving in 2019 and it's like making back all of its investment. It's doing great, selling, and then the other day we got a closing notice. So the show is going to be closing in June of 2020. Even though it's still making money, it's really successful, but the Showman organization, who kind of own a chunk of the theatres on Broadway, they want to put The Music Man with Sutton Foster and Hugh Jackman into the Winter Garden Theatre where Beetlejuice currently is, and they've not found another theatre for it. So they're like, so we're just gonna close it and put it on tour instead. And it's like, no, I think it's such a shame. I mean, it's always sad when a Broadway show closes or any show closes, because I always think of all of the people who work on that production, whether it be the cast, the crew, front of house, you know, there's always a big change around for all of those people. And some people are going to be losing their jobs, some might get something else, some might get to go on the tour, but whatever it is, it's sad, and that's number one. I think it's really sad that they've not tried to find it another theatre. They've just kind of been like, well, the Music Man's coming in, so you're gonna have to go, aren't you, Beetlejuice? Really? Right. My second one is to do with Jonathan Pryce playing the engineer in Miss Saigon. So he started the production playing the engineer, who is half French, half Vietnamese, and Jonathan Pryce is a white man, and so he was in the English production on the West End playing somebody who would normally be played by an Asian actor, and has since on Broadway and in the West End revival and everything was played by an Asian actor. Now, apparently nobody had an issue with it on the West End in the 90s, I think it was early 90s, but apparently nobody had an issue with that. But when it went to Broadway, people were protesting and breaking into the theatre and things because it should be played by an Asian actor. I've read a lot about it, and apparently at the time Equity said, well, isn't it discriminatory to say that that character needs to be played by an Asian actor because the character is half French and half Vietnamese, so you're saying that they have to have a certain look. But, and here is the big annoying thing, when Jonathan Pryce played the engineer, he was made to wear eye prosthetics and he was made to wear bronzer to give him a darker skin tone. Therefore, you are saying that he should have an Asian look, but you're saying that an Asian character doesn't need to play that role. That's contradictory, and I disagree. I mean, he went along, he still played it on Broadway, he won a Tony for it, whatever. I've never seen his performance. I didn't see it on Broadway because I was literally a baby. I don't know. I've seen him interviewed about it as well, and he's like, well, the thing is, I was the right actor at the time, and, you know, they did audition Asian actors, and there wasn't anybody right, and I was the right actor for it. And he also said it was the easiest role he's ever played as well. I don't know, it comes across a bit big-headed and a bit entitled for my liking. I just think they've managed to find Asian actors since then, so why couldn't they find one at the time? They went over to the Philippines and found Lea Salonga. Why didn't they spend a little bit more time finding somebody to play the engineer? I mean, what is quite interesting as well, he would have probably been too young at the time, but John, who played the engineer in the West End and the Broadway revival a couple of years ago, he was actually in the original production of Miss Saigon. So the person who then went on to play it on Broadway was in that production, and you're saying that they couldn't find anyone who was good enough to play that role? I just think that's kind of wrong. Okay, so the reason I'm actually doing this video is because I talked about it in another video I did the other day where I was talking about Finding Neverland, and Finding Neverland had a really interesting story. It was originally written and they did like a production in the UK, and then apparently it just panned. I didn't even know that this was a thing, but I found it in my research. And then apparently Gary Barlow rewrote the musical with James Graham doing the book, Gary Barlow doing the music, and Harvey Weinstein was kind of the main executive producer on it. The year before it came to Broadway, they had Jennifer Hudson perform a song from Finding Neverland on the Tonys, and everyone was like, interesting. But sometimes they throw a little random one in there on the Tonys, so not too crazy, but a little bit like, that's interesting that that was put in before it was even on Broadway, so it's quite interesting. But you know, he's got loads of money, he clearly like managed to pay his way in or whatever. Then they were doing the show on Broadway with Matthew Morrison, Laura Michelle Kelly, Kelsey Grammer, and I mean, you've got those three big Broadway names in there, and you think, well, they're gonna get some nominations for something at least, even if it's not for Best New Musical, they're gonna get it for something. And then Tony nominations came around and they went on. It was so sad because Laura Michelle Kelly was vlogging for Broadway.com at the time, and she was talking about it in there, and she was like, that's a bit weird, but we're all keeping our spirits up. And it was really sad actually, because obviously when a show doesn't get Tony nominations, it has the tendency to not then progress and to close quite early. You know, the Tonys are a big thing in American audiences, and on Broadway, people want to see the Best New Musical of the year. They want to see the one with the most Tony Awards. And apparently that was all Harvey Weinstein's fault, because he obviously, aside from his sexual misconduct and sexual harassment and everything, as a producer, he obviously used to do these big campaigns with the Academy voters for the Oscars and would really like ram it down people's throat and invite them to these lush parties so that they would vote for his films and so that he would get the most Oscars. He used to get Oscar after Oscar after Oscar on sometimes films that didn't maybe deserve them compared to others, but I'm breaking off. So apparently he had this same tactic with the Broadway community, and the Tony committee apparently were not so keen on that, and they didn't like that he thought that he could just throw his money at things and his bolshy attitude. But also in the process of the creation of the show, Harvey Weinstein was apparently hiring and firing everybody and anybody. He was getting people who are well loved in the Broadway community and well respected, and he was replacing them and dropping them without care and not kind of appreciating people's place in the Broadway community, and kind of going in all guns blazing and just thinking that he can just order his way through. And apparently he was like trolling Gary Barlow around, making him perform at events and stuff, being like, hey Tony, I've got Gary Barlow from Take That, listen to him sing it. The Broadway community didn't like that, and then they didn't get any Tony nominations, and even worse than that, they still had to perform on the Tonys. I don't know how kind of the booking and everything works, but Matthew Morrison and Kelsey Grammer still performed stronger at the Tony Awards, even though they had no nominations, not one single nomination, which is like a little bit unheard of. And it was weird, and that's really sad. And then obviously with no Tony nominations, shows kind of close. But isn't that interesting? Apparently they wanted it to come over to the UK as well. This is what I heard through the grapevine. How much longer would you be mine? Honey, honey. Yeah, apparently they wanted to bring Finding Neverland over to the UK as well, and that has just never happened. I heard that a reason of it was to do with Gary Barlow also wrote the music for The Girls, which is the Calendar Girls musical, and that started in the UK, and apparently Harvey Weinstein was like, but I wanted Finding Neverland to be Gary Barlow's first English musical. I know, that's just what I heard through the grapevine. Okay, what's next? So I think that we have to talk about Amar Ramasar? Amar? I think I'm saying that right, but I could be saying it wrong. But he was a dancer in the New York City Ballet, and he was fired from the company for sending explicit pictures of one of his female company members to other members of the company without her permission. And so that was bad enough. I mean, I don't know, it really reminds me of like, you know when you were at school and there'd be one girl who'd sent a picture to a boy and then it had gone around the whole school. It's like, why are grown men doing this? Do you not know that there's enough consenting naked ladies on the internet? Why do you have to do it to the people that you know without their permission? Just do things consensually, lads. Really? So he was fired for sexual misconduct, but then apparently the union decided that it was too harsh to fire him, so he was brought back into the ballet, and he's since been cast in a revival of West Side Story. And I don't know, the thing is that it's not apparently a crime punishable by law, and where is the line as to where somebody can apologise and come back and whatever? Do you do one bad thing in your life and just be struck off forever? It's an interesting discussion, but for me, my discomfort with it is because he has just said, no, she sent the pictures to me consensually, and you know, it wasn't like that, and he's kind of denied the whole thing, and that's where I think the issues lie. Because if he came forward and apologised and agreed to go through counselling and stuff, apparently he's been ordered to do counselling, but he's still saying that it was consensual and he wasn't at fault. So I don't know, it's a very grey area, it's an interesting discussion. But I think if the other women in the company feel uncomfortable around him, then something needs to be done to support them. I understand that a union are there to kind of mediate and go through both sides of the story. I think if he'd apologised and shown some remorse for it, then I would have less of a difficulty with it. But it's just like it's all been forgotten, and it's like, look at him, he's now principal dancer again, and he's in West Side Story, and it's so great, and it's all forgotten. And I think that's where the issue lies. But it is interesting as to where the line is. Should he never be able to dance professionally again? Or should it be through rehabilitation? Or, I don't know. I'd be interested to know people's thoughts on that. So it would be interesting to hear what you think. So possibly one of the most famous Broadway scandals in history is Sunset Boulevard. You might know about this, but you might not. So basically, Patti LuPone was in Evita on Broadway, and she then went over to London and played Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard on the West End. And apparently it was in her contract that after the West End she would then transfer it over to Broadway and all would be good with the world and she'd be smashing her best life on Broadway. But when she was in the production, apparently Andrew Lloyd Webber was like, not sure Patty's the one for us to take this to Broadway. So he got Barbara Streisand to come in and record some of the songs. Glenn Close was also in a production of it in California. And Andrew Lloyd Webber was like seeing which other ladies he thought should play the role. And then in the end, he gave it to Glenn Close. She took it to Broadway, and Patti LuPone was very angry. Apparently she like ripped up her dressing room and was like broke a lamp, and I don't know, like, I understand that you're frustrated. I understand. But maybe it's because I'm not a terribly aggressive person, but I just can't imagine ever being that angry that I would like break things. And it seems a bit kind of petulant. In the end, she ended up suing him for breach of contract for $1 million and put a pool in her house and called it the Andrew Lloyd Webber Memorial Pond. I mean, that's kind of savage. It's kind of great, isn't it? I think it's such an interesting story. It's just a little quick one because it's nice and simple and it's all tied up now. Apparently her and Glenn Close are pals now, and she sang Don't Cry For Me Argentina at some big award show a couple of years ago. So she's clearly fine with Andrew Lloyd Webber now, so it's all in the past, and she got a pool out of it. You know, what's not to love? So my next one would be about Jeremy Jordan and The Greatest Showman. So this is one that there's not really anything about it online, but when I went to see his concert back in October, he was like, I've never really talked about this, but I feel like in London, the people are really nice, so I'm gonna tell you my story about The Greatest Showman. And I was like, I'm so ready. Basically, many years ago, Pasek and Paul, who wrote Dear Evan Hansen and Edges and also The Greatest Showman, and they contacted Jeremy Jordan and they said, listen, we're making this film, Hugh Jackman is going to play P.T. Barnum, could you just come in and sing all the tracks for us? You're a great singer, we love you, could you just come and do this for us, Jeremy? So he was like, absolutely, lads. So he came in, sang all the songs, and was like, I'll never play P.T. Barnum because I know Hugh Jackman's got that role, so that's fine. But he was like, there was a little sidekick role in the film, and I thought, maybe I could play that. I'm paraphrasing, but you know what I mean. And so he went off living his best life, being in Supergirl, living in LA, and they were like, listen, we're gonna do like a big pitch to film producers that are gonna give us the green light to see if we can get this film made. And they were like, could you come in and sing the songs of Philip Carlyle? And so he was like, yes, absolutely. This could be my big break. I could be in a big blockbuster film with Hugh Jackman. This is gonna be great. So he was in LA at the time, but this pitch was in New York. And they said to him, listen, we can't afford to fly you out to New York. So he was like, lads, don't worry about it. So Jeremy Jordan books and pays for his own flight to go over to New York. Apparently like 2 days before or something, he gets like the worst cold of his life. He's like lost his voice, cannot sing, and he's like, oh my God, I have to get over this. What am I gonna do? So Jeremy Jordan got cortisone shots. I think it like gives you a boost of adrenaline, or I'm not really sure how it works. I don't know. I used to watch it in this gymnastics program where they all used to take it, but it like helps you get better really quick. I don't know. So again, he paid for these shots so that he could get his voice through the performance, so that he could hopefully be seen by these producers and they might offer him the part. So he gets on the plane to New York. While he's on the plane, he gets an email saying that Hugh Jackman has got a form of cancer and he's had to have an emergency operation on his nose, which means that he won't be able to sing. So Jeremy Jordan, please can you sing all of the songs for the pitch? And Jez is like, okay, my voice hurts, but okay. You'll have all seen the video. I think it's got like 30 million views on YouTube. There's videos from that pitch of Hugh Jackman standing there, Jeremy Jordan singing, and Hugh Jackman is standing there emoting the songs through his face, which is so weird. Whatever. I've never been in a movie pitch, maybe that's normal. He said that it's all going all right, he's singing fine, but then when he has to sing Rewrite the Stars, he said that his voice was really hurting, and he said to Cynthia Erivo, name drop, right, who was playing Zendaya's part, he was like, listen, I might balls this up. If you could just riff over the top, that'd be great. And apparently she just laughed, and then they started the song. And apparently he said that it went like this. Rewrite the stars, keep us apart. So like losing his upper range, and he said that it just wasn't very good, and he felt really kind of frustrated by the end of it. And the last song was From Now On, and he was like, right, this is my time to pull it back. I've just messed it up. I need to have my redemption moment. I need to make sure that I can still be in this film or have a shot at it. And he said that he started singing and Hugh Jackman was like shaking his head, and he was like, why are you shaking your head but still singing? Hugh Jackman started like nodding his head, and he was like, singing, why are you nodding, Hugh Jackman? And then he started singing, and so Jeremy was like, oh, this is Hugh Jackman's moment, and he's gonna have the moment and I'm not gonna get to redeem myself. And Hugh Jackman finished the song and apparently like ripped all of the stitches out of his nose from his singing, and he is fine, by the way. He also found out that later that day, after this had all happened, Hugh Jackman had contacted Zac Efron and offered him the part of Philip Carlyle. So Jeremy Jordan did all of that and didn't get anything from it and lost money, and he was like, right, that's a closed chapter in my life. And then when the film came out, they released the videos of the pitch. So 30 million people saw him being involved in this project, and obviously people were like, Jeremy, I didn't know that you were involved in The Greatest Showman. And he was actually like, that's actually quite a sad and stressful and upsetting thing. And when you watch it, you can kind of see a glint in his eye, but when you watch it, you would think that Jeremy Jordan was living his best life, because he's like literally standing, he's clapping, he's belting his face off. He looks like he's having an amazing time, and when he talked about it at his concert, it was heartbreaking. I literally was crying. Like, I don't know if that's that I'm emotional or that he just is a really good storyteller. I just think it's so sad, and to have that then played out in front of millions of people online is just awful. We've only got one to go, we're running out of battery. So the final one would be Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812. I think this is probably the biggest controversy the last decade in theatre. Certainly the biggest one that I've ever heard of. So basically, Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812 was a show that was actor muso in the round. It was a very like different show for Broadway. It's based on War and Peace, and it's a bit of a random one, I suppose. If you look at it on paper, you think, that's strange. But against the odds, it made it to Broadway. It had Josh Groban in the lead role. And Josh Groban is a very big star, you know, everyone knows him. He was on Glee.
Who is Josh Groban? Who is Josh Groban? Kill yourself!
And it was doing quite well, and then after Josh Groban had to leave the show because he owed his record company another album, he wanted to go back on tour, and he'd been in the show for a while, and he was like, this is my time for a change. So they got Oak Onadawan to play Pierre, so he was going to take over. So it's Oak from Hamilton, if you don't know. The difference is that Josh Groban is a household name. Most people know who he is. Oak, not many people know who he is. Hamilton fans do, but other than that, he's not got a huge fan base. So it was quite risky to have somebody in who wasn't a super household name in a show that was starting to lose money. Apparently before he started as well, there were some issues with his ability to learn the role. So Pierre had to obviously sing and act, but also had to play the piano and the accordion. And so Oak had to learn how to do those things. And I mean, this is all what I've read online, so, you know, I don't know. And everything that you read has a bias, so I'm trying to be as non-biased on either side of this. But apparently Oak was having difficulty with learning the role. They had to delay his start date for the show, and he said that they were misleading in how much he would have to do in the show, which I think, I don't know, like, when you're in theatre, there's always things that you have to do. He's not been specific about what it is, but in my opinion, it would be things like playing the piano when somebody else is singing or whatever, or playing the accordion in the ensemble. They're the kinds of things, because if it's not those kinds of things, you've already seen the role, so why wouldn't you know what he has to do? You've seen Josh Groban play it, you've seen it on stage, why aren't you paying attention to... Anyway, I always think about, like, in Les Mis, for example, Carrie Hope Fletcher at the moment is playing Fantine, but when she dies, she then goes into the ensemble and plays somebody on the barricade. There are things that you have to do in theatre when you're not your role. You have to do other things towards the show, so that's the only thing I can maybe understand. But I just think, why weren't you aware when you signed up to what you had to do? But anyway, so apparently there were those issues anyway, but they weren't making enough money. And so then they decided to put Oak on hold and get Mandy Patinkin in. So Mandy Patinkin is from Homeland, which I've never seen, but apparently that makes him famous. I don't know, I've never seen it. But he was in Evita, Sunday in the Park with George, a really famous Broadway star, as well as being a household name as well. And he hadn't been on Broadway in something like 18 years, so it was going to be a huge thing. So they decided to put Oak on hold and bring in Mandy Patinkin, which is a thing that does happen a lot in theatre. Previously in that same show, they had Britton Ashford playing a role, and they put her on hold and brought Ingrid Michaelson, who again is a household name, into the show for a short amount of time to boost ticket sales, and then Ingrid would go out and then Britton continued her role. And they were going to do the same thing with Oak, but Oak is a black actor and Mandy Patinkin is a white actor, and it suddenly turned into a race issue. People were saying that it's wrong for a black man to be taken out of a show and a white man to be brought in. It's not fair, it's not supporting BAME actors. And Dave Malloy, who wrote the show, said, this did not even cross my mind. We did the same thing with Britton and Ingrid, and at the time had the most diverse cast on Broadway. So he said the idea that this would be anything other than just thinking about the well-being of the show at the time and needing to just bring in some money and bring in a household name so we can continue the show for so many more people who work on the production. He said that he never saw it that way. My personal feeling is that it wouldn't have been done that way. It was a diverse cast. They'd done it before with other actors in the same production. I genuinely don't think that race came into it, but I think that representation for ethnic minorities, maybe it does become a race thing. And Oak said that he was told that he was being kicked out and never to be brought back, and very much encouraged the rhetoric that it was a race issue. Obviously, I don't know either side of it. I don't know if he was told, I don't know if he wasn't. But I think at the end of the day, it was a money issue. When it comes from a team of white people telling a black man that he shouldn't be in a role anymore, it can come off a certain way. I don't believe in my heart that that was the intention, but I think that, you know, people on Twitter and people were writing things in chalk outside the theatre, saying things about keeping Oak in, and, you know, they have said that they intended on bringing him back. And anyway, I'm getting into lots of different things. I'm supposed to be just giving you the facts. So anyway, then Mandy Patinkin was like, I don't want any part of this, I'm gonna leave. So he then pulled out of the show. Oak also pulled out. And so David Malloy, who wrote the show, went in to play Pierre for the last 2 weeks. They got their closing notice and the show closed. And I think the reason why it closed, is for so many reasons. I mean, it was kind of all dragged through the mud all on social media, and I feel terribly sorry for everybody involved. I feel sorry for Oak, for Mandy, for David, for everybody who was in the company, because, you know, it's sad whenever a Broadway show closes, as I've said so many times. I think it was just a lot of people were very het up, people were very emotional. I think if it was handled with a little bit more patience rather than people just saying exactly what they think right away and kind of dragging it through all on social media, maybe it wouldn't have had the same outcome it did. I mean, it wasn't really a commercial show anyway that would sell very well to tourists, so maybe it was never going to have that life, but I feel very sad about it. I hope I didn't get that wrong. I feel like I included everything. I hope it made sense. So yeah, they are my controversies, injustices, scandals of the Broadway community. Let me know what you think. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you maybe learned something. I would be really interested to know your thoughts on them. What are your opinions on what happened to Great Comet? What do you think about Finding Neverland? Do you think that Tony voters should have looked at the show rather than the producer? I'd be really interested to know what you think. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I do hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you have a great afternoon, evening, or whatever you're doing. I hope you're having a good time. Feel free to subscribe to my channel if you like theatre. I really just talk about theatre because I love it. So yeah, if you like that, then stick around. I'm so close to 50,000 subscribers. I'm so close. So it would be cool to see more people around here. Anyway, I'm babbling to heck. So I will see you soon. I love you lots. Bye!